first thing I want to say is I've already recorded this, so it feels a bit weird having to repeat myself again. I recorded it, it was too long, wouldn't import into iMovie, tried to cut it down on Windows Movie Maker, except my audio sound card thing has completely busted today, so it wouldn't even open, so I couldn't cut it in half to export into iMovie to work on. So I'm at the end of my tether pretty much already, so this had better go right. The second thing I want to say is I'm really sorry. I've just been awful putting up videos, as you know, recently. The first reason is because of my anxiety. I just shut everything off when I get stressed, and that includes work, projects, reading, people, friends, texting, everything just goes completely out the window, and I sleep and I eat and I bury myself in the computer, although not doing anything constructive. The other thing is that during the holidays I also just completely shut down. There was no sense of time, days, weeks, anything. Both weeks I found halfway through Tuesday that it was Tuesday and the day before was Monday and I hadn't done what I was supposed to do on Mondays. So I'm really sorry about that, and that's all I can say really. I just had a few books to talk about and the review to address, and I think that's about it. The first thing I wanted to talk about was this book called Backwards in High Heels, The Impossible Art of Being Female. And it's just a really nice book. The story behind it is that I was on Amazon looking for something, I can't even remember what, possibly revision books, and it was one of the new books in. I decided to look at the big page, and I knew instantly that I'd love it, so I ordered it. About 5 minutes after it got delivered, I'd ordered another one for Rosianna, who also recommends it, and there's a link to her video when she's talking about it in the sidebar. It's sort of like a thinking woman's manual for life, but not really a manual. It's not self-help, it just talks about lots of different subjects to do with life, career, men, food, love, all of that sort of thing. The second thing I want to talk about is that I found this in the charity shop today, and I'm really looking forward to reading it. Hopefully I like it more than Sweet Scarlet. I really want to like it. And it was just nice to find it in the charity shop, because you never see anything like that in charity shops around here. The third thing that there was is when I found 13 Little Blue Envelopes, I was also looking at the book section, which is the only reason I go in charity shops really, because I love books, obviously. Is this book, The Child That Books Built. And the title spoke to me right away, because it related to an article I'd read in the Sunday Times magazine, which I'll talk about in a minute, to do with Queen Rania of Jordan. And this is an autobiography by someone called Frances Bufford, who I've never heard of before. And it says, "What would you find if you went back and reread your favourite books from childhood? Frances Bufford discovers both delight and sadness in this beautifully written memoir of a boy who, faced with a tragedy in his family, retreats into books." And I'll just read you the first sort of page and a bit, because it's just lovely. Chapter 1, Confessions of an English Fiction Eater. "I can always tell when you're reading somewhere in the house," my mother used to say. "There's a special silence, a reading silence." I never heard it, this extra degree of hush that somehow travelled through walls and ceilings to announce that my 7-year-old self had become about as absent as a present person could be. The silence went both ways. As my concentration on the story and my hands took hold, all sounds faded away. My ears closed. I didn't imagine the process of the cut-off like a shutter dropping, or as a narrowing of the pink canals leading inside each waxy, cartilaginous passage arising tight, like some deft alien doorway in Star Trek. It seemed more hydraulic than that. Deep in the mysterious ductwork, an adjustment had taken place with the least possible actual movement, an adjustment chiefly of pressure. There was an airlock in there. It sealed to the outside so that it could open to the inside. The silence that fell on the noises of people and traffic and dogs allowed an inner door to open to the book's data, its script of sound. There was a brief stage of transition in between when I'd hear the text soundtrack poking through the fabric of the house's real murmur, like the moment of passage on the edge of sleep where your legs jerk as your mind switches over from instructing solid limbs to governing the phantom body which runs and dances in dreams. Then, flat on my front with my chin on my hands or curled in a chair like a prawn, I'd be gone. But I don't know when I'll get around to reading it because I have a whole stack of books that I have to get through. The thing in the Sunday Times magazine was an article by Queen Rania of Jordan about how books can change lives. And there's just one section I want to read. I'm not going to read the whole of it because it's really long. I'll scan it in, post it on my blog, which also has beta entries, which I've majorly failed at, but if you want to read them, they'll be in the link in the sidebar, along with the scan of this. And there's just one thing I wanted to read from it. It says, "Reading is a form of liberation. I was reminded of this last month in South Africa when I met Justina Mlofe, a charismatic storyteller. Her aunt collected books, even though she was illiterate, locking them in her suitcase because she knew the words hidden within were somehow important. Today, Justina is on a quest to unlock that suitcase. She travels the country telling stories, encouraging children and adults to read, leaving behind a suitcase of books at each stop. She does it because her aunt was right. Reading is important. Learning to read and write has the amazing capacity to change lives."